Hello and welcome to the Blogging Your Passion Show. I'm your host, Jonathan Milligan, and today's topic is called 33 Actionable Takeaways from the Amplify Summit. Now, as I'm recording this, we have just wrapped up and finished the Amplify Summit. We had over 27 presenters, and the Amplify Summit was specifically designed to help writers, speakers, and coaches amplify their income. In other words, take their single message and create multiple streams of income. And that was the whole purpose and goal behind the summit. We've received some fantastic feedback and reviews, people who've already taken action and implemented what they've learned. And so I thought it would be helpful to actually dedicate a whole episode to actually sharing with you kind of the highlights. You know, as we watch a lot of information, and if you've been a part of a conference or a summit, it's important that you take time to process your notes and break them down. So you're going to get some of my own personal takeaways today on what I got out of the Amplify Summit. First of all, it was like drinking out of a fire hose. I have told people over the last couple of weeks, I felt like I got an MBA in the business school of writing, speaking, and coaching. So if you're listening to this today, if you're a blogger, a writer, a speaker, or a coach, you're going to get some things to think about. Now, if you want to grab a copy of this, all 33 actionable takeaways in like a PDF format where you could print it off, I've actually put it onto 4 pages of a PDF, and you can grab your own copy by texting the word Amplify to 44222. Again, just text the word Amplify to 44222, and you'll get access to all 33 of these takeaways in a PDF that you can print off, you can use, you can add them into your own business. So I have a lot to cover. So we're going to jump in and get started with these takeaways. So the first track is the speaker track. And so these first few takeaways are going to come from those who presented for the Amplify Summit that are largely speakers. And that's what they do for the majority of their income. So takeaway number 1 was from Grant Baldwin. And he said this: to build a profitable speaking business, go after relationships, not gigs. You know, when he said that in the interview, that really resonated with me, because it's so easy as an emerging speaker, or maybe you're just getting started thinking about starting a speaking career. It's so easy for us to be focused just on getting that next paid speaking gig. And I understand, because cash flow is needed. But the difference between what Grant said and how we often think was having a long-term view of this whole thing. When you go out and you build relationships, instead of just focusing on gigs, you're going to do well. It's going to help you build a nice, big speaking business. So that's the first takeaway. To build a profitable speaking business, go after relationships and not gigs. The next 2 come from Ken Davis. He had an amazing episode. So number 2 was, until you make a profit, you can't profit other people. I thought that was so interesting that he said that, because, you know, we often come, if you're a writer, speaker, and coach, you often come from this heart-centered place. Like, you want to really be able to help people. If you're a coach, you want to see transformation. If you're a writer, you want to see people benefit from your work. If you're a speaker, you want to see lives transformed with your message. But it's easy for us to forget about that. It's necessary and it's important that we make a profit. And so when Ken Davis said, until you make a profit, you can't profit other people, I found that extremely interesting and something you and I need to think about. Takeaway number 3 from Ken Davis: speaking is not just a job, but it's an opportunity to touch lives. Speaking is not just a job. In that interview, he said something that really hit home to me. He said, Jonathan, if I was in this just for the money, I would have quit speaking a long time ago. And what he meant by that was not that the money's not good, but for him, 30 years of speaking and getting into the age that he's at today, he's like, for me to to board a plane, go somewhere, speak, come home, board a plane, go somewhere and speak. Because for me, at this point in the stage of my career, it has to be more than just about money. And how about that for you? Is speaking more than just a job, or do you see it as an opportunity to touch lives? Takeaway number 4 and 5 come from Hugh Culver. And I love takeaway number 4. The speaker's dilemma is when you are so busy chasing after work, you don't have time to build a real business. That's the speaker's dilemma. And maybe you find yourself there. If you are going speaking, or if you've been speaking for any certain amount of time, the speaker's dilemma is, well, if I booked 25 paid speaking gigs last year and I want to double my income this year, I can do 2 things. 1, I can double the price of my speaking fee, or 2, I can book twice as many speaking fees. But what Hugh was challenging all of us is for us to think about taking our message and repurposing it in a lot of different ways. In fact, that leads me to takeaway number 5. How can I leverage my intellectual capital so people can buy it in multiple ways? Let me say that again, because I thought this was so good. How can I leverage my intellectual capital so people can buy it in multiple ways? How about that for you? Do you have intellectual capital? Do you have things that you've learned through your own experience, through things that you've learned from counseling other people, coaching other people, that you can bring in and figure out a way to package that for other people? How can you leverage your intellectual capital so people can buy it in multiple ways? That if you just write that one question down today and think about it, I think later on you'll begin getting some real insights. All right, takeaway number 6 is from Michael Hudson. He said this: stop being the last guy to follow up and commit to being the first guy to follow up. You know, what's interesting about his interview, if you guys watched Michael Hudson's interview at the Amplify Summit, he really talked about how he took a opportunity, just one single speaking opportunity, and it became a 6-figure business for him in 12 months. And here's what he did. He had a credit union that had a speaker that backed out at the last moment. And they asked him, Michael, I know you don't primarily speak to credit unions, but can you come speak for us? Now, what he did was he started getting feedback, understanding the language of the credit union world and industry, and started getting feedback after his talk. And he said what things changed for him when he became the first guy to ask for feedback instead of the last guy. So be asking for feedback is incredibly powerful. Number 7, takeaway number 7 comes from Dennis McEntee. Understand a person's internal GPS. Now, Dennis has been a long friend of mine for a long time, and when he told me that probably about 3 years ago, I have never forgotten it since. I have used this over and over again in my business, and it'll serve you as well. Now, for a speaker, this is helpful when going into a new niche. So you're going into a new niche, it's a new opportunity, and you need to understand the customer. You need to understand who they are and what they're about. So what Dennis does is he simply uses something he calls a person's GPS. G stands for goals. What are their goals? What are they trying to accomplish? The letter P stands for passions. We all have things that we're passionate about, something that we want to pursue, something that we get really excited about. And then finally, the letter S stands for struggles. We all have challenges, obstacles, struggles we're trying to overcome. And so when you're going into a new niche as a speaker, think about finding out what are the goals, what are the passions, and what are the struggles. And that will serve you well. Number 8. Takeaway number 8 comes from Jeremy Kubicek when he said, work-life balance is not a time issue, but a mindset issue. Let me say that again. Work-life balance is not a time issue. It's a mindset issue. Now, one of the best books I've read this year was from Jeremy, and it's called The 5 Gears. And the 5 gears help you to be appropriate at the right place and at the right time. So for many of us, if we're writers, speakers, coaches, online entrepreneurs, we have our laptops with us. We never disconnect from work. We could be downstairs at our home. We could be hanging out with our family, and we've got our laptop open, right? And we think we're hanging out with the family, but the truth is we're not. We're in a different gear than them. And that's when frustration comes. Now, I don't have time to go into all 5 gears, but I would encourage you to check out Jeremy's book, The 5 Gears. It's an excellent book that'll help you figure out how to be fully present at the right place and right time. All right. Takeaway number 9 comes from Marissa Shadrick. I think Marissa had a great training session for us when she kind of dove into some really good speaking tips. And specifically, I liked, and while there's many that I could choose, takeaway number 9 is to video record yourself, to review your presentation, and then watch yourself with no sound. It's really something I'd never thought about before. You know, do you have any past speaking gigs where you were recorded? Then what about watching those or rewatching those and turn the sound down and just watch your mannerisms, your style, the way that you use the stage? Do you have a tendency to hold your hands too closely or look too timid? Do you from the camera's view, do you feel like you're including the whole audience? Are you over on one part of the stage? I mean, there's so much that we can get from it when we can rewatch a recording without the sound. I thought that was such a great takeaway. Number 10 comes from Pete Vargas. He had several great takeaways, but I'm having to limit these down to 1 or 2 for each speaker. And he talked about the Story Braid. The Story Braid, it's BRAID. And the Story Braid is a great format for remembering how to structure your talk. And he simply uses this format: heart, head, hands, and back to heart. Heart, head, hands, and back to heart. And this is what he said. Too many speakers want to lead in with the logical. But what Pete said, which I thought was so true, is if you open the heart first, then you have permission to guide them with the critical steps of their head to do the talk. So what's a personal story? What's a way that you can create connection? How could you create tension at the beginning of your talk? How can you draw people in with story to really help them understand the why behind the what that you're about to deliver? Let me say that again. Stories help us understand the why before we get to the what. And as a speaker, when you can lead with a story, personal story, a story about someone else, once you get the heart of your audience, now you can talk to the head. And then, Pete says, go to the hands. And that is, give them one actionable takeaway, some sort of step, some high leverage step that can help them to take action. And then finish it up with the heart. Maybe cast the vision for what kind of world would this be like? What kind of society would we be? What type of a country would we be if we followed this? And so, again, he calls it the Story Braid: heart, head, hands, and back to heart. And here's the cool thing. If you adopt that format as a speaker, you don't have to wrestle with trying to remember all your notes because you know the transition. The story's personal. You know or can memorize the 1 to 3 head actionable steps and the one takeaway. So I thought it was a great point. And the number 11 takeaway is from Kent Julian. He said there's 3 ways to niche your speaking career: by topic, audience, or both. And by the way, he did a great job describing why we need to niche and even why we need to niche even further when we think we've already niched. Because if you're a speaker who thinks they can speak to everyone, you're going to end up speaking to no one. you have to select a niche and get to know that niche and become known in that niche. And so the way you do that is either by niching by topic, by audience, or by both. Topic, audience, or both. So those are the takeaways for the speaking track. Now, if you're just kind of tuning in or joining us and you're like, man, where can I get a copy of all these? You can actually get all 33 takeaways from this Amplify Summit that I've put together in a 4-page PDF. All you guys need to do is text the word Amplify to 44222. Again, Amplify to 44222. You can print off all these takeaways. I'd encourage you to print them off, keep them nearby you, implement them into your business, and start taking action on these. All right, so let's jump in to track number 2 on writers. So this is specifically for writers. The first one was carryover runner. Takeaway number 12. More than just passive income, your book can have passive impact. Think about that. So many times you hear people talking about how, man, I want a book so that I can create this passive income. You know, I can get those royalty checks every month from Amazon, or every quarter I can get that royalty check from the book publisher. But here's the cool thing. Your book can have passive impact. And your book's impact is not determined by the success of a book launch. Let me say that again. Your success, your impact of a book is not determined by the success of a book launch. You say, well, what do you mean? There's many books that are more of a marathon, right? There's books this year that have impacted me that were published 10, 15 years ago that I'm just now reading. So I thought that was a good takeaway. Takeaway number 13 from Carrie. Your book is more than just a fancy business card. You know, so many times as authors, and I've even made the mistake myself, of thinking as my book as being a business card. But here's the thing that you need to remember. What do people do with business cards? Well, maybe they'll scan them into Evernote if they're really good with technology, but more than likely, they get tossed. They get thrown away. And you don't want that with your book. And this is what he said. Business cards don't change lives. Books do. Let me say it again. Business cards don't change lives. Books do. Such a powerful thought. Rob Cosberg, number 14 takeaway, said this. What's the big problem that your book is solving? Now, this is specifically to nonfiction writers, of course, but have you taken time? Sometimes we get so excited about our idea or the book, but what's the big problem that your book is solving? That's an important question to answer for your next book. Chad Allen, takeaway number 15. And by the way, his session was on 7 secrets of a winning book proposal. And this is for people who want to traditionally publish a book. The thing that probably stood out the most for me was when he said this. Provide a lengthy 3-stage marketing plan before, during, and after the launch of your book. So when you're putting together a book proposal, you know, it's easy for us to think, well, be brief. You know, we've been taught that in the resume world. Keep your resume 1 to 2 pages at most. But what Chad was telling us is, no, publishers actually love more lengthy marketing plans inside of a book proposal. Now, of course, there's probably a limit, but if you have, you know, at least 2 pages of all the ideas you have for marketing your book, then that causes a publisher to stand up and take notice. Where most people that are presenting them are trying to keep it brief. They're trying to hold back. And what Chad is saying and telling us is don't hold back on the marketing section. Make sure that you add as many ideas that you have for marketing your book. All right, number 16 comes from Lindsay Hart. Here's the takeaway from her that I liked. She says, readers pick up a book because they're hoping for something. Readers pick up a book because they're hoping for something. And again, this is obviously in the nonfiction world. It could apply to the fiction world. But readers are really hoping to change their life, right? To change a relationship, to change their financial situation, to feel more hopeful, more happy, to build a business, right? They're looking for transformation. They're hoping for something. Number 17 takeaway comes from Rebecca Livermore. And she is a phenomenal writer, a great story. She's actually published 11 Kindle books in the last 18 months and really has built this business up in a very short time. And so when we talked about, well, how do you do that? Like, how do you become more productive as a writer? I want to know what your secret is, Rebecca. If you've written 11 full-length books in 18 months, what's been your secret? And here's one of the things. She had several, but here's one of the biggest takeaways. She said, break down your content into small parts and only focus on writing specific topics. So again, this applies for nonfiction, but if you're overwhelmed with the writing process, break it down into the smallest parts. Which part of the book are you most ready to write? Which one are you excited to write? And just get started writing. All right, number 18 comes from Nick Loper, and his takeaway was, ask the question, where else could I share this valuable content? In fact, if you had the ability to write something down right now, I want you to write this question down. Because if you've created any content in the past, you are going to want to think about this question again. Where else could I share this valuable content? Here's a great example. And by the way, what he meant by that is he took his podcast episodes, his interviews, transcribed them, and turned them into Kindle books. And he's published 6, 7, 8 Kindle books now in his series based on interviews of his podcast. And that came from asking that question. Another example is what I'm doing right now. As I'm recording this live, I have people in a Blab session. And those of you who've just joined us in the live Blab session, I'm recording this for 2 more purposes. I'm repurposing it. I'm recording this session to go to my YouTube channel for those that are subscribers to my YouTube channel. And I am taking the audio of this recording and it's going to iTunes for the Blogging Your Passion podcast show. And so you guys that are here live as I'm recording it are benefiting from this. And this is, let me explain what this is real quick. So it started with a blog post where I wrote all this out in a blog post. Now I'm presenting it live on Blab. It's being sent over when I'm done here to YouTube so people can watch it on YouTube. And the audio is being used on iTunes for my podcast. So what did I do? I answered that question I just asked. Where else could I share this valuable content? Now, in this situation I just shared with you, this is it's all free content. But think about it. I do the work once and I repurpose it in multiple ways. That's amplifying your content message, because there are people who listen to your podcast that don't pay attention to YouTube. There's people that love to watch YouTube that aren't listening to podcasts. And there are still people that love to read blog posts that do not do podcasts or videos. And so you will take your single message and widen that in so many different ways. All right, let's keep moving. Takeaway number 19 comes from Ray Edwards. The more specific you can be, the more powerful your communication becomes. Now, he did a session on copywriting, and he talked about, so many people resist niching down. They don't want to niche down too much to where I feel like I'm not talking to a whole lot of people. But here's the thing. When the more specific you get, the more powerful your communication becomes. An example is, I met a lady who has been blogging online. She's been trying to find her voice, trying to find her audience. And she said, I finally know what it is. She said, I am a stepmom. In other words, I'm part of a blended family and I'm a Christian. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a coaching program that is for Christian stepmoms. So what she did is think about how she got this niche. So she took being a mom down to just speaking to stepmoms, and then being a Christian stepmom. So she niched even further. And I promise you, when she comes out with her coaching program, it's going to hit home with her audience because she's gotten very specific. So again, the takeaway from Ray Edwards, the more specific you can be, the more powerful your communication becomes. Okay, takeaway number 20 comes from Kirsten Oliphant, and she said this: decide to make the whole platform thing fun. Reframe platform building as a way to attract readers and not to just build huge lists. So for many writers today, they get frustrated by hearing build a platform, build a platform, build a platform. Writers, they just want to write. They want to oftentimes, give their manuscript over to publisher who has sales teams that go out and market the book. I was talking with a gentleman a few months ago, and he has been publishing books for years. And I said, tell me about your most successful book. What happened there? And he said, you know what? That book, I was very fortunate because the Christian bookstore, Lifeway, decided to put it front and center on a display in all their stores when people first started walking in. He goes, that's really what sold the book. But you know what? Here's the thing. Times have changed. Today, publishers are looking for us to come as marketing partners in this whole thing. And that can be a little bit frustrating, especially if you have small lists. But what Kirsten was trying to tell us to understand is just decide to make it fun. Decide to reframe platform building as a way to just attract readers. Have fun with it. Don't put so much pressure on building a huge list. Number 21 comes from Daniel Decker, and it's this: you can have a successful book launch team even with a small group of people. So don't think that, I'm going to start this book launch idea and I only get 10 people to join my private Facebook group, but you never know who might know someone else. An example he gave was somebody on the book launch team actually had access to over 3,000 employees and decided to buy a copy of the book for every employee. Think about that. One member of the book launch team bought 3,000 copies for his employees. That is an amazing story. So you can have a successful book launch even with a small group of people. All right, so you guys have been sticking with me. I know this is a long list. It's a lot to digest. We're going to hit the last one on coaching and marketing right now. But before we do, if you want to get a copy of all 33 of these takeaways in a PDF that you can print out, then just text the word Amplify to 44222. All right, let's tackle these last few, and then I'll start by looking for questions, and we'll take some questions here live. So track number 3 is coaching and mentoring. Number 22 comes from Dan Miller. A great episode on how to create multiple income streams and build it into a 6-figure business. But the thing that I think is the central piece to his success was when he said this: everything I do today is in direct response to people asking for it. Everything I do today is in direct response to people asking for it. And as entrepreneurs, as writers, speakers, and coaches, it's so easy for us to take feedback that we get from people or questions we get from people, and sometimes we can see those as, oh, this is a distraction, or, oh, I don't really have time for this. Oh, I've got my plan. And the plan that we're on is devoid of listening and learning to what our audience is saying. It's devoid of the feedback. And that's a dangerous place to be in, because never assume you know what your audience wants. Never fully assume that you know what your audience wants. That's a dangerous place to be in. And so Dan Miller, his success is that He really just thinks about what people are asking for, and he turns around and creates products and services for it. Number 23 comes from Lisa Bloom. She's a story coach. And my takeaway from her was this: telling your story is much less nerve-wracking than trying to sell or market your services. Telling your story is much less nerve-wracking than trying to sell or market your services. See, if you're the type of person that, man, you're trying to figure out the whole elevator pitch and you're trying to figure out how to better sell or market your services, figure out how to tell your story. Because you know what's going to come with your story? Passion, energy, excitement. It's going to be easy for you to remember. You're not trying to tick the boxes in your head or follow some sales script, but you are coming from a place of sharing your story with passion, which then in itself will lead to the sale when you craft your story correctly. Mike Nichols gave us takeaway 24 and number 25. So number 24 was this: the goal of the first call, and this is for a coaching, if you're a coach and you want to sell coaching packages, the goal of the first call is to get the potential client to make some move towards you. Get them to make some move towards you. That means you have to be willing to put together options, create multiple options for the people that you are wanting to coach. You can't simply say, hey, it's $10,000, take it or leave it. Now, maybe once you get to a certain level, you can do that if coaching's not your thing. But if you primarily want to build a business coaching, you need to create options and help the person on the call make some move towards you. Number 25 is this: 30-minute coaching sessions work best because it requires both the coach and client to show up prepared. And I agree with Mike on this. I've done coaching sessions that were an hour. I've done 90 minutes. I've done half days. I've done full days. And oftentimes what works best is 30 minutes because it requires both the coach and the client to show up and make best use of that time together. All right, Giovanna Ellison gives us takeaway 26 and 27. 26 was this: when you launch out, you encourage others to do the same. When you launch out, you encourage others to do the same. See, we often forget, or we don't think about, sometimes we only think about ourselves when we launch out. How am I going to look? How am I going to come across? But what we don't think about is our courage helps others be more courageous. Like, our courage to do something gives permission for other people to follow suit. And so if you come from a heart-centered place of wanting other people to take action, then be courageous yourself. And by being courageous, you're going to encourage others to do the same. And then number 27, she said this: sometimes you don't need someone in your inbox, you need someone at your table. Now, she said this about thinking about adding live events to your income streams. So if you're a speaker and you go and you speak for other people's audiences, great. But what about hosting your own live event? If you're a blogger or a writer, what about hosting your own event, a live event? Or if you're a coach, what about hosting your own live event? And what she was saying is sometimes some people in your audience, regardless of what size it is right now, you have a percentage of your audience that doesn't need you in their inbox. They need you sitting at their table. And obviously, you got to figure out pricing and going to walk through that. But you do have people in your audience that want you in a live environment. Number 28 comes from Kirk Bowman. He did a session on pricing and value pricing versus hourly billing. And this is what he said that I thought was so powerful. If you bill by the hour, there's an artificial limit on your income. So if you're a coach specifically, you need to hear this. And maybe sort of as a writer or a speaker. But if you bill by the hour, there's an artificial limit on your income. Instead, think about value pricing. Now, if you want to understand value pricing, I don't have time to go into it here. Check out Kirk's podcast, theartofvalue.com. Okay, takeaway 29. We're almost to 33. You guys have been doing great on this marathon that we're going through. But number 29 comes from Mike Kim. And he is terrific at branding. And he made this statement: your story is your unique selling proposition. And when you are yourself, marketing becomes super easy. When you are yourself, marketing becomes super easy. You know, this has been true for me in my own journey. When I first started bloggingyourpassion.com, I often thought, well, man, I'm not like these other online bloggers and entrepreneurs. They have way much more energy than me. They're way more outgoing than me. I'm more laid back. I don't know if my style will resonate. You know, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to be leaning up against a Lamborghini and showing the mansion in the background. I'm not recording a video driving some fancy car. Am I going to be able to get people's attention by just being a normal average guy, a former high school teacher and basketball coach who had a desire to try to do something from home to help more people? And what I realized is the more that I leaned into who I was and the more that I allowed myself to be myself, marketing became super easy. And so if you're struggling with that today, I just want to encourage you to just lean into your own story. If you're trying to differentiate yourself from everyone else, you do that not by copying other people, but by being a more genuine you. That's how you do that. All right. Number 30 comes from Michael Margolis. And he is great at helping us craft our story. And one of the things he said that was so powerful is he said this: natural authority is the undeniable story of who we are supposed to be. You see, you may not feel like you've got authority today. You may think, I'm no expert. I don't have all the answers. I don't know if people are going to respect what I have. I don't know if people are going to pay me for what I know. But what Michael is trying to get us to understand is there is natural authority. You have natural authority. It's the undeniable story of who you were meant to be. And you say, okay, how do I find that? Well, he later on said, find evidences in your past to legitimize your future. Find evidences in your past to legitimize your future. And it's going to take time for you to think about that, craft that. You know, what are turning points in your life? What are things you did as a young child? What are, as a teenager and as a young adult, what are the things that you were passionate about that you wanted to pursue? What was your unique view on the world, your worldview? And when you begin to do that, you begin to see the natural authority that you have. Number 31 also comes from Michael, and he said this: share your story in order to serve your audience and not for ego validation. This is so good. Let me say it one more time. Share your story in order to serve your audience and not for ego validation. You see, I used to resist telling my story. And there was two reasons. One is I didn't think it was that fantastic of a story. I didn't have any, dramatic rags to riches story. Like I said, I was just a high school teacher. And so I used to wrestle with sharing, why would anybody care about my story? There's no wow factor in it. And number two, I didn't want to try to share a story and feel disingenuous by trying to make up stuff to make people think that I was an authority. And so what Michael said really resonated with me, and it probably is resonating with you right now. Share your story in order to serve your audience and not for ego validation. And when you have that perspective, your story will come across the way that it should. All right, two more. Number 32. Don't just make the hard sell. Communicate to whatever stage your audience is in first. So Scott's whole talk was on marketing funnels and how oftentimes we only focus on the sale. Hey, buy this or don't buy it. And what happens is we forget that people are showing up at different stages. Now, he calls them in 3 different stages. You have sidewalkers, slow lane, and fast lane. The fast lane people are oftentimes the only person that we target, right? They're the person that already sees that they have a problem. They know what the solution is and they're ready to buy. But what about the slow laner who's just discovering that they have a problem or a challenge? Or the sidewalker he's the slowest of all. He's still trying to figure this whole thing out. And we have to have the ability to communicate with each of those in our email communication. And then finally, number 33 comes from Matt McWilliams. He did a whole session on affiliate marketing and doing product launches. And he said this: promoting other people who have products that can help your audience doesn't diminish your brand. So, in other words, oftentimes what we think is, well, man, why would I promote somebody else's product? Because am I not just losing customers? Am I not just losing influence by saying, hey, go buy this other person's stuff? But the truth is, that's not how you come across. When you do this in the right way, and by the way, I have to say the right way, and that is make sure that you promote things that are genuinely good for your audience. All right, protect your audience at all times. But when you have something that can help your audience in a space that you're not talking about specifically, it could be a tremendous help to your audience. An example is a good friend of mine, Joseph Nicoletti. He has a program for Scrivener. Scrivener is a popular writing program. I use it when I write my books, but I don't have a course that trains people on Scrivener. He does. So I invited him to come over to our audience, do a webinar, and in that he ended up selling his Scrivener course. And there were many people from my audience that bought his course. I didn't see that as a threat. I saw it as a resource to help people in my audience who wanted to use Scrivener. And I didn't have a course teaching that. So when it's done correctly, it can be super helpful. All right, so those are the 33 takeaways. If you didn't catch them all, or if you're like, there's no way I could write all these down or remember them, again, right now, you can text the word Amplify to 44222. Well, that is the end of the Blogging Your Passion show. Thanks so much for being here. And if you guys want to check out more about the Blogging Your Passion show, you can just simply jump over to bloggingyourpassion.com or go find us on iTunes and give us a rating. So thanks so much for being a part of this episode.